Hello boys and girls, welcome again to your pedagogical space. Today we're going to move to session 5, which will be about comparison. Comparison, you all know what is the comparison. It is comparison of two elements, so comparatives, for comparing two elements. We'll talk about 3 points here: A, equality; B, inferiority; C, superiority. For equality, here is the structure for expressing equalities: as, adjective, as, or if you want the negation, not as, adjective, as. That is to say, you can say as good as, or not as good as. Then we move to inferiority, which is expressed with less, adjective, than. You could say, for instance, this is less interesting than that. And then we'll move to superiority, which is divided into 3 points. We can express superiority with short adjectives. That is formed as follows: adjective plus er, than. That is element A, adjective plus er, than. With long adjectives now: more plus adjective, than. And there are some exceptions, what we call irregular adjectives, like good, bad, far. Let's start with the comparatives now. What are comparatives? They are forms used to compare two elements, that is element A and element B. Now, let's ask this question: what do the following sentences express? Here are the sentences we're talking about. What do they express? Do they express superiority, equality, or inferiority? So, here are the sentences, and those are the notions. Sentence A: maths is more difficult than literature. Sentence B: literary subjects are as important as scientific subjects. C: schools are less crowded in rural areas than in cities. Now, what is expressed in each of these sentences? So, sentence A, what is expressed in sentence A? You see, it's superiority. Maths is more difficult than literature. So, these are two elements, element A and element B. We are comparing maths and literature. Now, both subjects are difficult, but one of them is more difficult than the other. This is why we say maths is more difficult than literature. We are expressing superiority here. Let's go to sentence B. What is expressed? It is equality. You remember we said as, adjective, than. Important here is the adjective. And we say literary subjects are as important as scientific subjects. You know that some students say, I'm not going to give importance to philosophy or to history because I am in the scientific streams. So be careful, that's not a good behavior. Huh? So literary subjects, remember, are as important as scientific subjects. And we are expressing here equality. Let's go to sentence C. Schools are less crowded in rural areas than in cities. Now what is compared here? What is compared is the number of students in schools situated in rural areas and schools situated in cities. So, in terms of number of students, the schools in rural areas are less crowded than schools in cities. And then we say schools are less crowded in rural areas than in cities. We are expressing inferiority here. Let's move to some more examples. Let's start with comparison of inferiority. An example. We have an example here. We keep the same example. Schools are less crowded in rural areas than in cities. Now, how come we decide this? Now, of course, before we declare this, before we say this, we must rely on some information, on some statistics. Here are the statistics. Schools in rural areas, how many students or pupils in those classes? We find 15 to 20 pupils per class in schools in rural areas. In comparison to schools in cities, where we find 30 to 40 pupils per class. So, what number is smaller? Yeah? It is the number of pupils in schools in rural areas. And this is how we make the comparison and say schools are less crowded in rural areas than in cities. Now let's have some practice. Use the following notes to write sentences expressing comparison of inferiority. You will have a list of sentences and you compare those elements. Here is element A and here is element B. Silver compared to gold. The adjective is expensive. How are you going to say that? As everybody knows, silver is less expensive than gold. When you go to buy a ring made of gold or of silver, the price is not the same, certainly. So silver is less expensive than gold. Let's go to the following example. The exercise is the same. B, boys, girls, athletic. Athletic, that is sporty. Who are athletic, boys or girls? Of course, girls are less athletic than boys in terms of physical appearance. Following example. Traveling by air and traveling by car. The adjective is dangerous. What do you think is more dangerous? Is it traveling by air, by plane, or by car? According to statistics, we will see what happens there. According to statistics, these are of course true information, true pieces of information. Traveling by air is less dangerous than traveling by car. And we have this information when we check the news on TV talking about the number of deaths in the Algerian roads, for example. How many plane crashes are there per year here? Maybe one plane crash every 2 or 5 years. As for cars, there are hundreds of car accidents every day on the Algerian roads. So traveling by air is less dangerous than traveling by car. Following sentence: maths sessions and sport sessions. We are talking here about relaxation. Which sessions are the most stressing, and which ones are the most relaxing? That is, yes. And remember, we're talking about inferiority. So, which sessions are less relaxing? Of course, it's maths. Math sessions are less relaxing than sport sessions, because generally during sport sessions students are at ease, they are playing, they are shouting. In comparison with math sessions, they must concentrate, they are doing exercises, and so on. They are stressed. Now, use the following notes to write sentences expressing the comparison of inferiority. The last sentence: winter, autumn, cold. We are talking about temperature here. The two elements we are comparing are the seasons of winter and autumn. Which one is less cold than the other? It is autumn. Now, we all know that autumn is less cold than winter. Now, here is the rule. Element A, verb, comparative phrase, that is less plus any adjective, plus than. Element B. Let's have a look at this example. Boxing is less safe than judo. Here are the two elements compared, boxing and judo. That is, judo is safer than boxing. Boxing is less safe than judo. Why? Because boxers have a lot of diseases when they grow older. Comparison of equality. Example: e-learning is as important as classroom practice. Now, why do we say this? Of course, we rely on some checkable information. E-learning is very important. We all know this. Classroom practice is also very important. So, if we talk about their importance, it is the same here. Very important, very important. This is why we say that e-learning is as important as classroom practice. And we have an exercise here. Use the following notes to write sentences expressing comparison of equality. This year, I am working hard. Last year, I worked hard. So, how are you going to express equality? Huh? This year, I am working as hard as I worked last year. That is to say, last year I worked hard, and it is the same for this year. I am working hard, and this is why we say this year I'm working as hard as I worked last year. Sentence B, the boy is tall now. His father is tall. That is, when he's small, the boy was, of course, smaller. And with age, you will see the boy is now as tall as his father. With age, children grow and they become as tall as their fathers. And we say the boy is now as tall as his father. Let's go to the following sentence. Boys are intelligent. Girls are intelligent. Is there any difference in their intelligence? Remember, we're talking about comparison of equality. So this is why we say boys are as intelligent as girls. Following sentence, telling lies is bad. Cheating is bad. How are we going to express comparison here? Telling lies is as bad as cheating. Both are bad. Telling lies is bad. And you all know that cheating is also bad. So, cheating is as bad as telling lies, or we start with telling lies. It's the same. Now here is the rule, comparison of equality. Element A and element B. So element A, verb, the comparative here, which is as plus any adjective again. As element B, it can be a short adjective or a long adjective. We have an example here. History is as important as geography. So the elements of comparison are history and geography. Their importance is the same. History is as important as geography. And let's move to comparison of superiority here. Now, we'll talk first with short adjectives. An example. Eating fruit and vegetables is healthier than eating animal proteins. Now, how do we say this? Because doctors always say that fruit and vegetables are excellent for our health. Animal proteins are good for health, but not as good as fruit and vegetables. So this is why we say eating fruit and vegetables is healthier than eating animal proteins. Let's have some sentences for practice. So use the following notes to write sentences expressing comparison of superiority using the short adjectives given. So every time you have an adjective that is given between brackets at the end of the note. So first, traveling by train and traveling by bus. We are talking about speed. Traveling by train is of course faster than traveling by bus. You all know that buses are most of the time taken in traffic jams and so on. So this is why traveling by train is much faster in fact than traveling by bus or by car. Traveling by train is faster than traveling by bus. B. Using the whiteboard, using the blackboard. We are talking about cleanliness. Which one is clean and which one is less clean? So, using the whiteboard is of course cleaner than using the blackboard. You know, when we used to write on the blackboard, we used chalk and brushes and so on. There was dust and colors and so on. Whereas today, we using the whiteboard, a pen, and it's much cleaner. So using the whiteboard is cleaner than using the blackboard. See, we are comparing here oceans and seas in terms of dimension, large dimension. What will be our sentence here? Expressing superiority. You all know, of course, that oceans are much larger than seas. Oceans are larger than seas. You remark here that we simply add the R for large, because the E is already there. Here is the rule. Again, we are comparing two elements, element A and element B. Element A, verb, then the comparative, which is short adjective. We are talking about short adjectives here, which is short adjectives plus er plus than, and then we write the element B here. Here is an example. Oceans are larger than seas. You remark that the E already exists. So short adjectives. What are short adjectives? Short adjectives are one-syllable adjectives, such as old, big, late, and two-syllable adjectives ending in Y, such as happy, easy. So what do we consider as short adjectives? It's all those adjectives. Adjectives of one syllable, like old, and adjectives of two syllables, but only which end in Y here, like happy, easy, dirty, healthy, and so on. Now there are some variations concerning spelling especially. So old, older than. So you see, we add er here. One syllable adjective plus er than. As for big, we must somehow transform the word by adding a G here. Why? Because the adjective is ending with one vowel and one consonant here. You see, big, vowel and consonant. This is why we must we must double the last consonant here in order to say bigger instead of baja or what or something else. Huh? So late now. Late. There are other examples for adjectives where we must double the letter. We have hot, fat, thin, sad. So we are going to say big, bigger than, hot, hotter than, fat, fatter than. We always double the letter, the consonant. Thin, thinner than, sad, sadder than. As for late, which has the same ending with the E as large, late, you see there is an E here, we simply add A, late than, later than. As for happy, which is an adjective which ends in Y, we simply delete the Y and replace it with I. Happier than, happier than, easier than, healthier than, and so on. So all adjectives which end in Y must have this form here. Happier, healthier, dirtier, easier, and so on. Now let's move to comparison of superiority. We have talked about short adjectives. Now we're going to talk about long adjectives. Now what do we call long adjectives? Long adjectives are adjectives that have 2 syllables or more. Huh? 2 syllables, but of course, except for the adjectives that end in Y, yeah? You remember. So let's have a look at this example. Meat is more expensive than chicken. Huh? You all see this on our markets. Huh? Meat is more expensive than chicken. Why do we say this? Of course, again, we rely on information, on new things that we know every day. Yeah? Meat, when you go to the bazaar, you find that meat costs 1,600 dinars per kilogram, and chicken 250 dinars per kilogram. This is why we say that meat is more expensive than chicken. Huh? Meat is more expensive than chicken. Now let's have some practice. Again, use notes expressing comparison of superiority using the long adjectives that are given at the end of each note. Huh? So we have interested here. What are we comparing? We are comparing reading books and playing video games. So which one is more interesting than the other? Of course, it's reading books. Huh? We say reading books is more interesting than playing video games. Let's go to another example. The second example is secondary studies compared to university studies in terms of advanced. Which studies are more advanced than the other? Of course, it's university studies that are more advanced than secondary studies. There is more research and so on at the university. Following, students in the morning, in the afternoon. When are they more active? Think of yourself, for example. Are you more active in the morning or in the afternoon? Of course, we are generally generally more active in the morning. And we say students are more active in the morning than in the afternoon. Here is the rule. Again, we are comparing two elements, element A and element B. Element A, verb, then the comparative, which is more plus long adjective plus than. Element B, remember we're talking about long adjectives here. And here is the example. Meat is more expensive than chicken. More, long adjective, expensive, than element B. Now, what are long adjectives? Long adjectives are two-syllable adjectives which do not end in Y. Remember, healthy, dirty, and so on. So, long adjectives are two-syllable adjectives, not ending in Y, and all adjectives of three or more syllables, such as interesting, expensive, important, and so on. Here are some examples of that type of adjectives. Stupid, active, silent. These are two-syllable adjectives. Stupid, active, silent. You see now the importance of talking about this one. They are two-syllable adjectives, but they do not end in Y. So, stupid, active, silent, and comfortable, dangerous. We can add expensive, important, interesting, and so on. Now, of course, there are again some exceptions with what we call irregular adjectives. Irregular adjectives, they are not many. We have good, well, bad, and far. Adjective and comparative. Here are the adjectives, and here are their comparatives. So good becomes better. We have an example here. Health is better than wealth. This is a proverb, a well-known proverb. You all know that it's better for us to be in good health rather than to be rich and sick. So health is better than wealth. Well is the same. Well also becomes better. An example, I feel better than yesterday. We are talking about a person who was somehow tired or sick the day before and who recovers the next day. And he says, I feel better than yesterday. Bad becomes worse. An example, the wind makes the bad weather worse. You know, the weather in winter, for example, is bad because it's raining, it's cold, and so on. But imagine a day when it's raining, it's cold, and there is a strong wind. You know, that situation becomes worse. The weather was bad, but with the wind it becomes worse. The wind makes the bad weather worse. Far, we're talking about distance here. Far becomes farther or further. The two are interchangeable. So we can say in this example, I'm very tired. I can't go farther, or I can't go further. You remark A and U here. So, and the two have exactly the same meaning. We can say, I'm tired, I'm very tired, I can't go farther. That is, I must stop and relax for a while. Now, we've come to the end of our session. So I tell you goodbye. See you next time.
شكرا على المشاهدة. لا تنسوا الاشتراك في القناة، الضغط على الجرس، الإعجاب بالفيديو.